Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for being here. On behalf of the Rector, Church Warden and PCC of Holy Trinity Horfield, you are really welcome here to this Festival of Bach. We're overjoyed to have you here. So, a couple of things before we get going. Fire exits, should we need them, are that way and that way. I should have had another career. If you do need to use our very simple loo, it is through that door there, and please use that as you need to. After the presentation and this afternoon, there will be refreshments served at the back. You are really welcome to stay. But this is a festival of Bach, and some of you will know our musical director here at Holy Trinity, and you'll know that he is a very quiet, softly spoken, unassuming man. Well, what we're going to find out today is that actually he has a really passionate side, and he's going to share that with us. So we've just played a bit of Bach's St. John's Passion for you. There will be more music through the rest of the afternoon, but please, if I could ask you to welcome John Crow, musical director of Holy Trinity Horfield, to talk to us this afternoon.
Guten Tag. Ich habe eine Leidenschaft. For those of you who do not speak German or Deutsch, I have a passion. My passion is Bach. It gives me a reason to live. It brings me comfort and joy each day. Every day I listen to Bach, and helps me sleep at night, and I listen to Bach when I'm driving the car. So I may not be Bach's #1 super fan, but I'm right up there. I think everyone has a passion in life, whether it's a pop star, a comedian, or a football team. My passion is Bach. Anyway, before we get going, there is a quiz. I hope you picked up the quiz from the back. If you pay attention, then you should get all the answers. Okay, so that's just, and there's also a crossword. There will be some refreshments at the end, I think, as Nick said, and there's a Bach display, which is basically from my own travels round Thuringia and Saxony, which I've done over many years. So you see some of the wonderful churches that Bach would have known and played the organ at and directed. So, and yesterday, the 21st of March, it was the 275th birthday of Bach, so we are in a special time. So, who was Bach? Today, hopefully you will learn a bit more about Bach. But the first thing I'd like to do is just ask you to say how you think Bach should be pronounced. So, over to you. Yeah, Bach. So with the CH as in the Scottish loch, so Bach. Bach. Right, good, well done. So another question for you, just to whet the appetite. How many pieces of music do you think Bach actually composed? Any guesses? 1,500 I heard from there. So
300.
Okay. 3,000. Okay. Well, the truth is that no one actually knows. So there are 1,128 recorded pieces of music. So if you look at the catalogue, the VWV catalogue, then you will see 1128. Some Bach scholars think that about half of his music is lost. And there's even one Bach professor who thinks a tenth of Bach's music is all we have to preserve today, which would mean he wrote over 11,000 pieces. But I think we're thankful that we've got what we have, which is about 1,128. And so if you listen to Bach non-stop, how long do you think that will take you? Okay. Around about 200 hours, which works out just under 9 days. So if you listen to all of Bach's saved music, then that's going to take you around about nine days to listen to the entirety of it. So the interesting story, I mean, you can study the music that has been preserved and the music that's been lost. So when Bach passed in 1750, his music passed to his sons. That would be his elder sons from his first marriage. That is C.P. Bach and Friedemann Bach. Now C.P. Bach, he tried to keep the manuscripts of Bach, but Friedemann wasn't quite so good. So he was heavily indebted in his life. So fortunately, some of Bach's manuscripts, Friedemann sort of either burned to keep himself warm because he was impoverished, and some of it, his daughter went over to America and she took some of the music. So it's all over the world. Bach's music is all over the world, and some of it's still being discovered. So while much of it is lost, there may well be some discoveries to come. So in my own mind, I regard the church music, the sacred music of Bach, as being his supreme contribution to music. I just want to start with how my own passion with Bach started. So it started when I was 12, when I first had organ lessons in Colchester. My music teacher there was an organist, and he loved playing Bach. So, and when I heard Bach, I was completely blown away. So since the age of 12, and since then I've devoted myself to the organ and sort of enjoying and excelling at it. So my love of Bach has just grown and grown since the age of 12. So Bach was born on the 21st of March 1685 in a town called Eisenach, which is in the northeast of Germany, in a very wooded part of Germany, and the town sits under the mighty Berg fortress, which is a very dominating castle, which is where Martin Luther was imprisoned. So there's a strong connection between Bach and Luther. And Eisenach is a very beautiful town, which sits below this mighty fortress in the forest of Thuringia. And Bach died on the 28th of July in 1750 in Leipzig in Saxony, which is a little bit to the north of Eisenach. So Bach in his lifetime, he didn't really travel outside of Germany. He lived and worked in many different places, in which we will discover in the course of today. So would like to just play another piece of Bach, just to kind of whet the appetite. I find it absolutely incredible that he could actually conceive all this music in his head, and in a day and age which didn't have mobile phones, motor cars, no electricity, no sanitation, and he was able to write all this absolutely incredible music. So I'm going to play part of one of his cantatas. So forgive me if there's any IT issues. Generally, IT and me do not mix very well. I'm happy on the music, but when it comes to tech, I'm really not that good. So I'm going to play you Cantata 146. So this cantata, the opening movement is, the cantata itself is called Wir müssen durch wir Trübsal, which means we must pass through great sadness. So, but Bach's music spans all the emotions from superb joy to great sadness, and this is music which actually is incredibly powerful. Anyway, I'm going to start. So Bach, I said, was born in Eisenach. He was the youngest of 8 children, so Bach was used to big families, and we discover that Bach himself had 20 children, no less. But Bach was the youngest of 8 children. He was born in 1685. His father was a string player employed by the town council and the Duke Court of Eisenach. Bach started school when he was 7 and likely picked up the rudiments of string playing from his father, and he would have attended the Georgenkirche in the town centre, where one Johann Christoph Bach was the organist. Unfortunately, just before Bach's 10th birthday, both his parents died, and he was an orphan. So thankfully, his eldest brother, also named Johann Christoph, organist at Earl Ordorf, looked after, took Johann Sebastian in. Christoph had been a pupil of Pachelbel, so you will know Pachelbel's canon. So Christoph likely gave Bach his first formal keyboard lessons, and as we know, Bach was a superb sort of keyboard player, organist. So the young Bach did very well at school, and in 1700 his voice secured him a place in the select choir of poor boys at the school of Lüneburg. During his time there, he visited Hamburg to hear the organist Reinken, at which time he would have heard a French orchestra maintained by the Duke of Calais. So Bach likely returned to Thuringia in 1702, by which time he was already a proficient organist and he would have been 17. By March 1703, he was a member of the orchestra employed by the Duke of Weimar, that is Johann Ernst, the brother of Wilhelm Ernst, that we'll hear about a bit later. So I'm going to play you another cantata. This is Cantata 23, Du Herr Gott und David sung. So this is, I heard this piece actually performed in Eisenach in the Georgenkirche. And the piece itself, Bach wrote it as an audition piece for the job of cantor in the Thomaskirche in Leipzig. So it's extraordinary. writing that as your audition piece. Absolutely unbelievable. Anyway, Bach got the job in Leipzig, so people would have been amazed to hear music like that. Anyway, in 1703, at the age of 17, 18, Bach got his first job as organist in Arnstadt. So Arnstadt is a small walled medieval town, very beautiful, just outside of Erfurt, which is quite a big town in Thuringia in Germany. So Arnstadt, a very small town, lots of churches there, medieval churches, very beautiful walled medieval city. And there Bach devoted himself to the organ. Now there are a number of interesting stories about Bach as a young man. So as a young man he probably enjoyed his freedom, as most young people do. In October 1705 he obtained a month's leave to go to hear the famous organist Buxtehude, Dietrich Buxtehude, in Lübeck, way up in the northeast of Germany, a distance of something like 200 miles, and Bach walked there by foot in the winter. So those of you who have been to Germany in the winter know what it's like. Well, in those days they didn't have motor cars or buses or trains or anything. He walked. He was given only 1 month's leave by the church. Unfortunately, he overstayed that. He was there for 5 months, so he got a right rollicking when he got home. But there's another fascinating story about the time that Bach was in Lübeck. So at this time, Buxtehude would have been a very old man, really flamboyant composer, organist, and the story is that Buxtehude realised just how talented Bach was. So he wanted Bach to succeed him as the organist in Lübeck. But there's one condition, which was that whoever succeeded him had to marry his daughter. Now, Buxtehude's daughter was 30 years older than Bach, and by all accounts, she was not very good looking. So Bach being Bach, and in fact Handel was also interested in this position at Lübeck, but because obviously she didn't have the fairest of looks, neither Handel nor Bach took over the role. It's quite a nice story, that. Anyway, so Bach's employers in Arnstadt didn't appreciate the fact that he'd overstayed his one month's leave, and anyone doing it in this country, even now, will probably lose their job. But Bach managed to, he stayed in his position. But because of the way that he embellished his hymn playing, the authorities didn't like the fact that he was embellishing the way that he accompanied hymns. So they complained about the fact that he played many curious variations mixed in many strange tones, which apparently confused the congregation. Although his organ playing took off, really, I think the experience of listening to Buxtehude, and I'm going to play the famous Toccata and Fugue shortly, and you can imagine sort of someone like Buxtehude with his fantastic playing, and Bach, I think, was so inspired by that he then wrote his Toccata and Fugue. There's a couple more stories about Bach's time in Arnstadt, which I'd like to relay. So, one instant in the summer of 1705, Bach actually sort of was quite offensive to one of the bassoon players in his orchestra, and the bassoonist was not too happy about this because he felt he was being assaulted by someone who was younger than him. So one dark night, this bassoonist ambushed Bach in the street with 5 accomplices and started beating him with a stick. Bach had his ceremonial sword, so it could have got quite messy, but thankfully there were some passers-by who managed to break them apart. But Bach's, obviously the authorities didn't really appreciate sort of what happened, and Bach didn't really feel that the choir and the orchestra in his church in Arnstadt were up to his perfectionist standards. So it was only a matter of time before he left. But there's one other story about his time in Arnstadt, which is quite nice. and this also caused some complaints about him. So apparently he was caught rehearsing with an unknown maiden in the organ gallery. So a lot of the German churches have organ galleries, so the organist is way above the congregation. And Bach was basically sort of rehearsing with this unknown maiden. And this unknown maiden was actually his cousin, Maria Barbara. And they went on to marry. But Bach was on such bad terms with the choir, the orchestra, and the authorities obviously had a number of complaints about him. So Bach basically felt that his time was up. I'm going to play you one of his earliest cantatas, which is 150, BWV 150, Nach der Herr verlanget mich. My Lord, I long for you, my God. So the last movement, it's a chaconne, and it's basically, as Bach's first cantata, it just highlights the extraordinary music that he was capable of producing. So here we go. So Bach's modulations are just absolutely incredible. So that particular movement, it describes how Christ leads from sorrow to joy. So I like the sentiment in that movement as you go through the words and the interpretation, the modulations are just awesome. Anyway, now Bach moves. He moves to Mühlhausen. So Mühlhausen is to the north of Erfurt. So when I visited a few years ago, it's in what was then East Germany. So it's not quite as glamorous as somewhere like Munich or the Bavarian state. The East Germany is still in a process of a lot of development. So it reminded me somewhere when I was 50 years ago, when I was growing up in Hampshire, very undeveloped. But all the churches now are absolutely stunningly beautiful. It's also a medieval town, walled, very historic, Mühlhausen. So in 1707, there was actually a huge fire which destroyed a lot of the town. So it's in the course of being rebuilt. So Bach arrived at the time that there has been this huge fire. So in the first year, in 1707, Bach got married. So he was 22 to Maria Barbara Bach. So at the start, things apparently went quite smooth, but he was only there for a year. It was in Mühlhausen that he composed the famous Toccata and Fugue in D minor, which is what I'm going to play in a few moments, as well as the great Paschalia in C minor, which is probably one of the most impressive pieces of organ music. has ever been written. So after a year, Bach resigned, basically because he considered his salary was inadequate, but also perhaps because of the dismal state of musical life after the fire it destroyed much of the town. So I'm going to play you another cantata before I move on to the organ. So this time I'm going to play the opening of Cantata 131, BWV 131, Aus der Tiefen Ruhe ich, which is out of the depths I cry to thee, O Lord. Again, this is amazing. So I said sometimes the tech got all the adverts, so just wait for those to go away. Here we go. So we've concentrated a lot on Bach's church cantatas, so I'm now going to entertain you on the organ, which was Bach's speciality. So I'm going to play the well-known Toccata and Fugue in D minor, which needs no introduction. Follow that with the Choral Prelude of Wachet auf, Sleeper's Wake, and then I'll conclude with the Arioso for the organ, which is setting of the Sinfonia. A lot of people consider that Bach didn't know how to write a melody, but the Arioso is a superb melody. So, anyway, I've just got to change my shoes and then I'll fire away the organ. Thank you. That's only a taste of Bach's organ music. It's just wonderful. Anyway, move on to Weimar period. Well, Weimar is quite a bustling town in Germany now, so quite historic. The house where Bach lived is no longer there, but Bach spent nearly 10 years in Weimar, so for Bach that was quite a long time. And there he was appointed as court organist and the Concertmeister, director of music, Concertmeister. So Bach moved to Weimar in 1708 with Maria Barbara, who at that time was pregnant, and her elder unmarried sister, Friedolana Maria Ratha. So Friedolana actually stayed to look after Bach's household until her death in 1729. So it was in Weimar that that Bach had 6 children by Maria Barbara, and the most famous ones that we know are CPE, Carl Philipp Emanuel, and Wilhelm Friedemann Bach. So in Weimar, Bach had a trained orchestra at his disposal, so he turned his attention to more pastoral music, instrumental music, rather than the famous church cantatas. So he became a well-paid musician in Weimar, and obviously he was enjoyed his years there. Unfortunately, towards the end of 1717, so nearly approaching the 10th year, Bach asked to be dismissed from his appointment because he wanted to take on the much better paid position, a more distinguished position of the court conductor of Prince Leopold van Anhalt-Köthen in Köthen, which is even water north, quite close to Leipzig. So the Duke Wilhelm was not happy about this at all. He refused to accept Bach's resignation, and as a result had Bach arrested and put in prison. So I bet you didn't know that Bach was put in prison, did you? Or did you? No, he was put in prison for 1 month. So he was disgraced. So he shouldn't have resigned, but he did. And even worse, he wasn't paid for the last quarter of the year. So he had a family of 6 children and no income. So how bad is that? But the story is that Bach put together his famous organ book line, which is otherwise known as a little organ book, while he was in prison. So this book of organ works, it comprises sort of choral preludes for the whole of the church year. So it's a treasury for the organist, because you've got pieces for Advent, for Christmas, for Easter, and many other things beside. And so he was actually industrious when he was in prison, and he put that work together, and it survives. So I play from it, and countless other organists play from it. So one of the church cantatas that we know that Bach did compose in Weimar is the cantata BWV 12, Weinen, Klagen, Sorgen, Sagen. So it's got the wonderful words, weeping, lamenting, worrying, fearing. So it's Bach all over, isn't it? So I'm going to play a bit of this. Hopefully, don't have that awful problem with that. In actual fact, I'm going to, because I haven't quite got the CD selection with my phone with the plan B, which was CDs. So I'm going to play something else, and it's actually one of the questions. So this is cantata BWV 50. It's an electrifying piece. Nun ist das Heil und die Kraft. So it's a double chorus. It's absolutely splendid. It's got an amazing modulation in it. And you can hear the armies of heaven taking on the armies of hell. So it's ever so dramatic. And this is just absolutely... So you've got these adverts again. Tech and me just do not go. So once I get rid of the adverts, we're in business. Here we go. So this is an amazing piece. Nun ist das Heil und die sword and you're fighting the hosts of hell. So that's what this piece is all about. So really glorious stuff, absolutely wonderful stuff. Anyway, in 1717, Bach moved to Curtin. This is one place that I've not actually been to myself. So one of my dreams is to visit all of the Bach towns. And this is one place I've not yet managed to be. So hopefully I'll get there before too long. So it was in Curtin that Bach was appointed the Kapellmeister, Director of Music for the Prince, Leopold Prince of Anhalt-Curtin. And Leopold was very musical himself, so he appreciated Bach's talent and basically gave him a splendid income, paid him very well, so Bach was free to compose whatever he wanted, and he did. So it was in Curtin that he composed the Brandenburg concertos. He composed the cello suites, which are very famous, the orchestral suites, and the wonderful partitas for solo violin. So that was amongst what he was busy in Curtin. So, and also in 1719, Bach decided he wanted to visit Handel because the composer Georg Friedrich Handel was born in the same year as Bach, 1685. And Handel lived in the town of Halle, which is quite close to Leipzig and also just 22 miles from Curtin. So Bach set out to meet with Handel. Unfortunately, Handel had already left, so they never actually got to meet in the whole life of Bach, and never actually got to meet Handel. So at this time, Bach was travelled to different places with the Prince, and in 1720, very sadly, his wife very suddenly died. But the following year, he met a highly gifted soprano, Anna Magdalena, who was 16 years his junior, who sang in the court of Curtin. They got married in December 1721, and they went on to have, how many children do you think they had? 13. They didn't all live, but I mean, that's just incredible, isn't it? 13 children. Just the mind boggles. But then they didn't have any television in those days, so that's what that's good they do. Anyway, well, Bach was composing some of the time, as we know. So the most famous of those was Johann Christian, known as the English Bach or the London Bach, because he did actually visit London. So what we know is that probably during those 4 years in Curtin, Bach was probably the happiest time in his life, because he was in good terms with his employer and who enjoyed and loved his music. So it's something of a surprise that we find that in 1722, Bach was applying for a different position. The story of Bach's Leipzig audition is really quite interesting. So I played at the start an extract from the Cantata 23, which was one of his audition pieces for the Leipzig job. He wrote 2 cantatas for the audition. So Bach was third in line for the position of Thomas Cantor. So that's the choir leader. The role of cantor is you have to look after the choirs of various churches. So provide the music and train them and get them singing services. And in Bach's day, services would last for about 4 hours. So if you think you're hard done by here for Mass for 1 hour, and if it goes over by a few minutes, think of it in Bach's time, they would go on for about 4 hours. And they would do the whole cantata. So Bach was busy writing cantatas, and they would last about half an hour, and the whole of the cantata would be performed as part of the service. So the mind boggles. But anyway, so Bach was third in line for the role of Thomas Cantor. So behind no less than Telemann, who was a very famous composer, contemporary of Bach, and two other organists, choir masters. So the people of Leipzig weren't all that happy about having to endure a third-rate musician, so someone after Telemann. They really wanted Telemann, but obviously Telemann was a bit concerned about the role because it was considered a bit of a poison chalice. But Bach had a young family, had all these children, and he had, from his first marriage, his two eldest boys, he wanted to give them a good university education, something that Bach himself never had a university education. Think about all that music. He didn't go to university, had no real proper music training, and he was writing all this music. So Bach wanted the best for his children. He wanted to give them a university education, and he also realised that at Leipzig he would have musicians, orchestras, churches that would be able to perform his music. And if you think about all the performances of Bach that we enjoy today on CDs, in Bach's time, if you think of the standard musicians and the instruments, they wasn't like what we have today. So, before we move on to Bach's final years in Leipzig, I'd like to invite our festival choir to sing some of Bach's choral music, church music. So they're going to sing from the Cantata 147, Jesu, Joy of Man, Siren. Now understand that next Saturday, the 29th of March, in Henley's URC church, they're doing a Bach concert and they're doing the whole cantata, but just as a matter of passing. So we're going to sing to you a couple of pieces by Bach. was in Freising a week ago last Friday, and I was on my way back to Heathrow last Friday, and I heard what happened at Heathrow yesterday, so yeah, I feel very blessed that I wasn't on my way back yesterday. But at Freising, there was a poster for the St. John Passion, which is going to be performed there on the 29th of March, so that was quite interesting to see that. So now we're going to talk about Bach's last appointment in Leipzig as the Thomas Cantor Director of Music at Leipzig. So he arrived with 2 carriages from Curtin with his wife and family, and his sons, and his daughters, and they moved into an official residence there at Thomas Kirchhoff. Now, I don't know if any of you have been to Leipzig. It's quite a big town in what was East Germany, so Leipzig Gewandhaus Orchestra is one of the great orchestras of the world. Leipzig has benefited from a huge amount of investment, so it's got a subway system, but a lot of the old town that Bach would have known is still intact, and the church is St. Thomas Kirche, where he worked, is very much still in the town. And it's quite a lively town. It's got a huge university, lots of sports fields for when it was under East German rule. But East Germany has a different character from West Germany. Even today, it's one country, but still you can still tell that it's still quite different. And even in the time when Germany was all in separate kingdoms, you can still sense the different regions and towns, and it's really quite interesting. Anyway, in Leipzig, Bach started composing this huge oeuvre output of cantatas, no less than 300 church cantatas. If you think that one cantata normally consists of about 7 movements, and he was writing these at a rate of 1 a week, and they're just not ordinary music. I mean, it's quite incredible, sublime music, masterpieces, every one. And he also found time to write his St. John Passion, and St. Matthew Passion, the Christmas Oratorio, the Easter Oratorio, and the Creme de la Creme, which is the Mass in B minor, which I'm going to talk about later. So I've just played you from one of the cantatas, so I don't need to play that again. In fact, now I'm going to talk about the story of the B minor Mass. Now, whilst I've been talking, someone's been watching you. So, Johann Sebastian himself. So I got this when I was in Eisenach in the Bach House Museum. Now, the Bach House Museum in Eisenach, I just want to tell you a little bit about. So, the original house where Bach was born and grew up, they kind of rebuilt it. And they have this incredible museum there. And I spent 4 hours in it, and I didn't see everything. It was just absolutely awesome. I said I've got a passion for Bach. I mean, I was in heaven when I was in that museum. I'll tell you, it was absolutely heaven. But anyway, I got myself a souvenir, which is, and he's been watching you the whole time, so pay attention. Now, I want to tell you about the B minor Mass. So this is actually my favourite piece of music. And I was in a charity shop. Yes, I do go around charity shops, and I found this. It's actually a copy of the score, the music score of the B minor Mass from 1948. Would you believe? Now, when Bach was writing music for his choirs and orchestras, they didn't have printed music in those days. It was all handwritten. And if you've looked at some of the scores that Bach wrote and the handwriting, and how on earth people got to read it and let alone sing it, just mind boggles. But I wanted to read, I'm going to play some of the B minor Mass, but in the days when people were able to write really beautiful English, I don't think people write beautiful English anymore, that's just my view. But the opening of this score is beautiful English, and I'll just read the opening because it's just incredible. So the Bach B minor Mass soars above like some huge primitive mountain rock. Its summit is lost in the clouds in an infinity of sunlit blue, lonely and sublime. It is unapproachable by any other music. The art of Bach is an art which yearns towards the eternal, Through love and the grace of God, it finds the way. Love which entwines the transient with the everlasting, the finite with the infinite, a yearning towards the unknown, to all that is undisclosed, a yearning only to be stilled, a yearning. So, I'm going to play the Agnus Dei, the Lamb of God, from the B minor Mass, which is, it's been called otherworldly music, and it really feels like it's otherworldly. The B minor Mass is considered transcendent music because of its ability to unify diverse listeners through its emotional depth and intensity. It's just one of the greatest pieces of music that ever been written. So we come to the last years of Bach. So he eventually became blind. So imagine that he was writing his music through the hours of night time, which he had no choice because he had all these children, and he was teaching and he was playing the organ. So the time that he was composing was at night, so he would have been there with the candles, and obviously his eyesight would have been stressed. So because his vision was declining, he had an eye operation performed on him by an English eye surgeon called John Taylor. Now, unfortunately, in those days, medicine wasn't like what it is today. So you did not want to have an eye operation in that time, believe you me. Well, anyway, so it wasn't a success. It was completely botched. In fact, Handel also had an eye operation by the same eye surgeon, which again didn't work very well. But unfortunately, Bach died shortly afterwards from a stroke because of the botched eye surgery. And his last words are very beautiful. His last words were, "Don't cry for me, for I go where music is born." So So sadly, his wife Anna Magdalena was left very badly off because she lost her breadwinner, and she had all these children to look after. And unfortunately, her children didn't really do much to help her, and her own sons and daughters were too young to really help her. So she died in 1760, 10 years after Bach, and sadly she died a pauper, so that was really quite a sad end. So I'll move on to something about Bach's personality. So he has obviously got a reputation, and some good and some bad. So we know that Bach was very religiously devout. He was thoroughly Lutheran in his theology. And if you go to the Bach House Museum in Eisenach, then you'll see 81 volumes of theological writings. This was Bach's personal library, and he would have referred to that when he was writing his cantatas. For Bach, nothing in life was mundane, or nothing was considered unspiritual. So he wrote a rather humorous poem about his beloved tobacco pipe. Yes, he had a tobacco pipe. So he wrote, "On land, on sea, at home, abroad, I puff my pipe and think of God." So Bach was obviously a genius, immensely talented, but this was down to sheer hard work because he didn't go to university. There were no music schools in those days. One learned to write music by laboriously copying it out. So he would have spent years copying music and from which he would have learned. So without question, he had an unfathomably brilliant mind. He had the capacity to hear music and to deliver music that is simply beyond the capacity of just about any other musician before or after. So as someone wrote about one of his cantatas, imagine walking around with this in your head. This music was in Bach's head, and he played it for people, and then he wrote it down. So it's just amazing. So we know Bach could have been a busy man throughout his life. So as an organist, choir master, music teacher, court musician, instructor at boys' school, father of 20 children. So the mystery is how he found time to compose at all. all of those things going on. So he was supposedly a very good music teacher, and some of his pearls of wisdom have come down to us. So he once gave some advice to one pupil: just practice diligently and you will do very well. You have 5 fingers on each hand, just as healthy as mine. And another organ student, he gave some advice. So organ playing, he said, is nothing remarkable. All one has to do is hit the right notes at the right time, and the instrument plays itself. I don't think Bach really had a sense of humour, but perhaps he did. I don't know. But I think we probably would have regarded him somewhat as terrifying, very fearful, because he was obviously a perfectionist. I mean, his music is incredibly complex, a very, very difficult music to perform. So, no doubt he had anger management issues. He was obstinate to the extreme. So I think his reputation is very obstinate, and he had to stand up for his rights as a man and as a musician, for he lived at a time when music was beginning to be regarded as no occupation for a gentleman. So Bach's music, we come to a few final thoughts. So despite his his complex personality traits, Bach had the capacity for tenderness. And in the music that you've heard today, it's very soft, very gentle, and very tender. And yet, in his music, Bach is expressing something larger than himself, states of the human soul, a universal cosmic order. So Bach himself said that he composed music for the glory of God and for the refreshment of the human soul. So for Bach, music fulfilled both a divine and a human purpose, praising God while consoling man. So some reflections of Bach. So the name Bach is the German word for little stream or brook. So Beethoven wrote that Bach was not a brook, but ocean should be his name. So imagine that. Chopin wrote, Bach is like an astronomer who, with the help of ciphers, finds the most wonderful stars. Rego wrote, Bach is the beginning and end of all music. Pablo Casals wrote, Bach is the supreme genius of music. This man who knows everything and feels everything cannot write one note, however unimportant it may appear, which is anything but transcendent. He has reached the heart of every noble thought and has done it in the most perfect way. Beethoven tells you what it's like to be Beethoven. Mozart tells you what it's like to be human, but Bach tells you what it's like to be the universe. So I want to close today by playing the opening of the Gloria from Bach's B minor Mass, which is perhaps one of the most sublime piece of music ever composed. So I read one comment about this piece from someone who sang it at a concert. So it is a work which is really sacred. I saw the heaven open and the angels singing. I cannot describe the feelings in my heart. So I just want to finish my talk with this playing the opening of the Gloria from the B minor Mass. Hopefully you don't get the adverts. But the adverts here, would you believe it? Yeah. Here we go. What a way to finish a career. So, as I said, I have a passion, and my passion is Bach. And in my view, in my own view, the world is a better place because of Bach. Because of Bach, sorry. Get very emotional. So. Thank you.
or I can tell you. I came in just as you were playing the Toccata and Fugue. What a wonderful multi-mixed media presentation. And do you know what? As I was sitting at the back there, we had our festival choir directed by our great friend Nick Sherwood, and you're playing. You know, these are people from the parish, the locality. John is our director of music. Bach's music resonating in a local parish. That is where it all started. So I want to say a huge thank you, John, for that very passionate and very heartfelt and so informative presentation. And thank you to our singers too. I just thought that was absolutely amazing. So let's give John a really big round of applause. I was told I wasn't allowed to say my joke, but I think the rector can joke in his own church. We certainly have a director of music whose Bach is far better than his bite. Anyway, so now, I don't want to ruin the rest of your afternoon, but there is tea and coffee and cakes and refreshments. It was a free concert, a free exhibition, so if you wish to make a contribution to the work of the church through our Welcome Project, then that will be much appreciated. So thank you very much. I hope you've had a wonderful afternoon, and it's good to see so many here. Thank you.
I'll go through the quiz because I know I made a lot of quiz for you today. So I'll go through the answers very quickly. Okay. So the quiz. We're getting the teas and coffees ready for you. So question number 1: in which country was Bach born? Germany. Correct. True or false? His family was built up of musicians. True. Correct. Question number 3: how many children did Bach have? 20. Perfect. What does his quite short last name mean in English? Stream. Yeah, you're getting there. Question 5. So which one of those is the correct designation for Bach's compositions? BVW, correct. Question 6. Which of the following characteristics is Bach and his music not famous for? Operas, brilliant operas, that's correct. Question 7. What is the form called? A fugue. Fugue, okay. Perhaps I did talk about his fugues now. Question 8. Where did Bach not live? Where did Bach not work as a musician? Heidelberg, correct. Question number 9. When Bach went from one working place to another in 1717, what kind of present did his former employer give him? Put him in prison, that's the right one. So Bach died in 1750. The name of one of his last compositions was The Art of Fugue. Yeah. Die Kunst der Fugue. Question 11. True or false? Bach died a pauper. False. Yeah, his wife died a pauper, but Bach was he was given a proper burial. Number 12. How many pieces did Bach actually compose? No one knows. That's the right answer. Correct. Number 13. How many wives did Bach have? Two. True or false? 5 of Bach's 11 sons carried the name Johann. True. Yeah, that one is actually true. Question 15. Did Bach write a cantata about addiction to coffee? Yes. True. Correct. He did. Question 16. True or false? Bach began his career as a church organist. That's true. Yeah. At Arnstadt. Question 17. But what was Bach's IQ?
165.
Yeah, 165.
But how do you know that?
Well, that's what I've done my research, and that's what the scientists say. question 18, which cantata is a contrapuntal representation of battles and massing armies? Yeah, number 50, BWV 50. 19, getting to the end. Which organist composers did Bach walk over 200 miles to hear play the organ? Buxtehude, Dietrich Buxtehude. Question 20, true or false, Bach was orphaned by the age of 10? True, that's correct. And the bonus question, number 20, what is Bach's longest piece of music? It's the Well-Tempered Clavier. Yeah. And for 10 bonus marks, can you guess the length of the Well-Tempered Clavier? I'll let you have it within 5 plus or minus 5 minutes. It's 4 hours. It's the 48 Preludes and Fugues. So anyway, so did anyone get all 20?